So what makes me cranky about Suicide Squad? Gang tats. Our new Joker looks like he would be much more at home on the streets of Los Angeles than battling Batman for control of Gotham. It's too bad because Jared Leto's performance is pretty good. It's kind of like a cross between Hamill's animated Joker and Ledger's Dark Knight Joker. But the tats, the chrome teeth, the bling, and the little background they actually end up giving him just completely undercuts any sense this guy is anything other than your average psychotic gangbanger. That obsession with having all these characters grounded in reality is the fatal flaw at the heart of the DCU that's going to kill it if it continues. Of course, every time the real-world Superman has a throwdown with a villain, he's going to destroy half of Metropolis and kill thousands of people. Of course, the real-world Batman is going to mow down criminals from the air with Gatling guns rather than get into hand-to-hand fights with them, because otherwise he's going to end up dead in an alley. That's why we don't set these things in the real world, because that makes our heroes more terrifying than our villains. What you really want is an authentic world that has hooks to the real world that allow us to connect with it, but still plays by its own set of consistent rules. That's what we really want. This Batman would have found and killed this version of the Joker almost immediately, to say nothing of these other mostly useless characters that make up the Suicide Squad. You may notice it took me a little while to start talking about the Suicide Squad itself, and that's just because the worst thing about this movie is that it constantly alludes to a really great Batman movie that we don't get to see. Even though Batman and the Joker mostly only show up as part of Harley Quinn's character development, she is by far the best thing about the movie. I'm not totally sold on Margot Robbie's portrayal of the character, and certainly not on the costume, but at least she adds some levity to the whole thing, so I started to feel like, why can't we drop these other Jokers and just watch the Batman Arkham Asylum movie? Especially because, just like Harley Quinn, this film is schizophrenic. It's basically 3 competing movies in one. The first is a Batman movie we all wish we could have seen, which is basically where Batman fights some of his lesser rogues gallery as part of a Harley Quinn origin story kind of thing. The second is Guardians of the Galaxy, which is clearly what this movie really wishes it could be. It's so desperate to emulate that style that it starts throwing one big pop song after another in as random background music, and while none of them are particularly bad songs or particularly out of place, they're not typically the kind of greatest hits on Guardians mixtape, nor are they used even remotely as effectively. And the third movie is the generic superhero action flick that we're all getting sick of. In fact, there's a moment where it seems like it's going to just subvert that whole thing and go in a completely different direction, but rather than doing something that cool, they just continue on with fighting the big bad superpower thing, even though all but 2 of these characters would be pretty much instantly eviscerated by it. Now, the Guardians part of this almost works, but it ultimately falls apart for precisely that last reason. The Guardians come together mostly out of coincidence, and they have some similar painful past experiences that allow them to relate to one another, and their shared hardship in the film forms them into a team, which is helpful because they have actual complementary skill sets. Then they fight the big bad because they're supposed to be heroes, and they're basically the last line of defense anyway. The Suicide Squad, on the other hand, is picked by Amanda Waller, who's awesome in this movie, by the way. She's the one character who actually feels like she translated to the screen properly, and Viola Davis just nails this performance. But in any case, it means all of these people are very different, and they're only forced to work together in as much as they have to be in the same place, or they will quite literally lose their heads. At first, that's still okay, because the montage bringing them together is fun and makes them seem like they'll be an interesting combination. But then these guys are deployed for a mission that both could easily have been handled by the Spec Ops guys they had to bring along to keep them in line in the first place, and seems completely out of step with the particular skills that they actually have. Since these guys are unpredictable master criminals who have every interest in escaping as soon as it's possible, it just seems stupid to bring them at all in that scenario. Especially since Waller clearly considers anyone under her command expendable. I mean, for all her talk of getting people to act against their own self-interest, she never uses that skill to convince any of them to work for her voluntarily. Just do it or I'll kill you. So why not just send the guys who already follow her orders without question? Why would you risk having to deal with these people escaping? I mean, Killer Croc and Diablo are the only 2 of them whose skill sets are actually useful, and of them only Diablo gets anything resembling character development. All the rest of that goes to Deadshot and Harley. Harley because she's fun, and Deadshot presumably because it's Will Smith. And they don't really spend enough time playing off each other to feel like a team at the end, or like they have any reason to be loyal to one another at all. And they fight the big bad because, hey, why not? On top of that, since the action itself isn't terribly spectacular because it's really just lots of shooting and punching red shirt zombie monsters, it's just generally unsatisfying most of the time. The good news is that, at some point, DC and Warner Brothers discovered this thing called humor, and they added a bunch of it to this film. That makes the whole thing infinitely more bearable than Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel were. And probably not nearly as bad as most of the critics are saying. I mean, yeah, this has problems, but Green Lantern and Fantastic Four, it is not. Now, I don't know most of these characters that well outside their TV versions of, like, Harley and Killer Croc and Deadshot. So if you really love any or all of them, I can't say whether or not their portrayal is going to piss you off the way Snyder's portrayal of Superman pisses me off. But, as I said, most of them don't really have a whole lot of development and are not that well fleshed out, so you may be able to just use your own headcanon to fill in the blanks on that, and that may work for you. The long and short of it is, while Suicide Squad certainly won't right the sinking DCU ship, it at least didn't tear another gigantic hole in the hull. So I'd say it's pretty much viewer's choice. Grab a cheaper matinee, or you can just wait until the Blu-ray and save some money without missing anything of note. They did add a mid-credits scene, by the way, and it's the best scene in the movie, in my opinion, so you should stick around for that. But that's one dinosaur's opinion of what is sure to be yet another incredibly contentious debate. So if you got thoughts on Suicide Squad, feel free to leave a comment below. And sometimes it seems like trying to create a great YouTube channel is a hopeless endeavor, but fortunately for you, I'm not as hardcore as Amanda Waller, so I won't put a bomb in your head and demand you like, subscribe, and share my channel.